Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, everyone. So, guys, listen, we are talking about World War III, British boots on the ground in Ukraine. This is not me speculating. This is not my analysis. This is not my opinion. This is from the mainstream media now, guys. Mainstream media are catching up. UK boots on the ground in Ukraine. So the United Kingdom is ready to spend well over 100 million on possible deployment of British troops to Ukraine. Look, guys, just from the get-go, I'm saying right now that 100 million is it's a tip. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's nothing in comparison. Like 100 million, like maybe 100 million on salaries, or like maybe 100 million on like transport, getting people there. When we're talking about war, guys, okay, 100 million is an absolute drop in the ocean. Absolute drop in the ocean, you know. If an aircraft gets taken down, if a tank gets taken down, you know, these costs ridiculously escalate out of all comparison, you know, out of all comparative metrics. So that's what we're talking about today, guys. It does look like British boots on the ground are going to be deployed into Ukraine. Also, Europe ready to deploy troops if Ukraine's ceasefire is secured. Now, one of the things I've said a few times on this channel is I don't understand what this means. British troops are going to go out there and enforce a ceasefire? It makes no sense. How do you enforce a ceasefire? Like just visualize this, guys, okay? Visualize it, okay? So you've got the Ukrainians and the Russians. They're on the front lines. And then behind the Ukrainians and behind the Russians, you've got an international force enforcing those guys to stop shooting. So, like, how are these guys going to enforce these guys to stop shooting? Like, if these guys start shooting, are the people behind them going to shoot them? That doesn't seem like what happens? What if those guys start shooting over here? It makes no sense, guys. It makes no sense. You can't enforce a ceasefire. You either have a ceasefire or you do not. You can't enforce it with another troop, with forces from another country. Now, this comes as a statement from the Defence Secretary, John Healey, in the United Kingdom. He has said that European troops are ready to deploy to Ukraine in the coming weeks. There we go, guys. Could be weeks. Could be weeks. It wouldn't surprise me if this deployment was before Christmas. Would not surprise me at all, guys, if this deployment was before Christmas. Now, what you've also got to consider is the budgetary requirements. If it doesn't happen before Christmas, then the next time you're looking at realistically is the end of March. Why the end of March? Well, you do it the end of March, you get that, you get that budget. You get to spend that last year's budget, and it's all about money, guys, and getting those troops out there. It's going to be expensive to get those guys out there. You know, it's going to be expensive. Let me just jump over to the chat, guys. Let me jump over to the chat. There's quite a few questions on the chat. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start with YouTube this morning, guys. Let me just click this button here. Debbie Doobs is saying morning on YouTube. Zoidine. Lisa Claydon is saying, for God's sake, I think we're talking about, British boots on the ground in Ukraine within weeks, guys, within weeks. That's what we've been told. Why are we getting involved? Well, you know, there's lots of reasons why Britain is getting involved. I wish I could give you a simple answer. I wish I could give you, I really do wish I could give you a simple answer. The reality is we are involved now. Britain is involved, and there's no getting out of that, so you either see this through or you fail. So I'd rather see these things through. On what ground would UK troops go to Ukraine, says Debbie Doobs over on YouTube. So as I'm reading it here, guys, look, I'll tell you what's going to happen. I will tell you what's going to happen now. There will be a ceasefire, a brokered ceasefire. Everybody will clap Donald Trump, and he'll say, I'm going to leave this to the Europeans now to make sure that ceasefire is in place. There'll be a deployment, and under no circumstances, guys, is that ceasefire going to hold. So then what's going to happen? You're going to have all these forces in Ukraine as peacekeepers. There'll be no peace. The ceasefire will fail. So they'll take their peacekeeping T-shirts off, and put their war fighting t-shirts on. They're a slightly different shade of green. And then that will be it, guys. I don't think anybody, even in that context, with British troops coming home in body bags, I don't think people people will still not be saying, yeah, this is not a world war. This is not a world war. Yeah, India and Pakistan are fighting. Pakistan and Afghanistan are fighting. The Americans are deployed into the Middle East. Yeah, it's not a world war. It's not a world war. There'll still be people saying that. We are in this now, guys. And look, ladies and gentlemen, if you live in the United Kingdom, don't think that you're insulated from this if you live in the United Kingdom. What we know from John Healey's speech yesterday is that the United Kingdom is the biggest threat for Russia, because the United Kingdom is leading the coalition of the willing now. The United Kingdom is leading in Ukraine, and and Vladimir Putin sees Britain as his number one threat. So what that means is asymmetric warfare, not guerrilla warfare, asymmetric warfare, non-conventional warfare, grey warfare, sabotage, cyber attacks. All that stuff is coming to the United Kingdom, guys. And I would speculate that it's already here. Zoe Dean is saying, why are we getting involved? With the way the UK is going, the troops will be needed here. And haven't we given the Ukrainians enough? Guys, look, I wish I could give you guys a simple answer. I do. I wish I could give you guys a simple answer. There is no simple answer to this. Certainly not while I'm streaming on TikTok anyway, because I would have to give my opinions on other nations. And when I give you guys my opinions on other nations, the live stream just gets blocked. You've got to have a look. Okay, so to start this, you've got to understand, near-peer enemies. You've got to understand near-peer enemies and bad guys. You've got to understand Britain, Britain's enemies, which, historically have been the Russians or the Soviet Union. Now, if the Russians continue to push through Ukraine, that means they will get into Europe. This is me speculating now, guys. This is me speculating. I've been on the money so far. The Russians would get through Europe. They would go through Europe relatively easy. They would make their way to the English Channel. And is that a world we want? Do we want a Russian-controlled Europe? These are big decisions, guys, and the answers are very nuanced. The answers are very nuanced and they're very granular, and it's very difficult to answer a question like, why are we getting involved? Without the nuance and the granularization. In short, we are involved, and that's the reality now. We are involved. If we back out, it's not going to be good. If we continue, it's going to be less not as good. Documenting decline is saying British boots have been on the ground from the start. They have already blown through the TA and have already been sent over. Yeah, so we know that there's already been British boots on the ground. What I'm talking about here is a mass green military deployment where you've got, blatant, units, battle groups now cruising across Ukraine in tanks with guns, bombs, trains, planes, automobiles, drones, all that sort of stuff, actually flying overtly now in Ukraine. The deployments to the British forces deployments to Ukraine have been on an advisory role attached to the government and some special forces units. And I don't know what those special forces guys are doing. Maybe climbing up drain pipes or something. Probably nothing that productive. If there's any blades watching, all right, let's not pretend that you go out there and do let's not pretend you're doing Sam Fisher stuff. Matt Alexander is saying, I don't think Russia will ever stop pushing in Ukraine because they're too heavy. Yeah, exactly, Matt. So I think Matt's answering a lot of questions here. So a lot of people are saying, why are we getting involved? And can you remember me saying this? I'm going to say it again. And can you guys remember me saying this like a long time ago? Like I used to say this quite a lot. We're going to get to a stage. We are very soon going to be at a stage, and I think we're almost there now, where it's not going to matter who did what and when and why and how. All that's going to matter is, right, look, right, yeah, there's been mistakes made. I didn't make them. I'm just documenting them. And there's been mistakes made, but it is what it is. We're at war now. You know, we either win or we lose. That's your ultimate question, guys. All right. Do you want to be on team win or team lose? Lisa is saying, do you think Putin wants more than Ukraine? Absolutely, guys. This is my opinion, speculation, analysis. Okay, so I'm going to give you quite a granular answer here. I am going to give you a granular answer. So back in 1962, before I ever had a multi-platinum selling CD, no, sorry. But I'm going to take you guys back to 1962 real quick. This was the height of something called the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, the Cuban Missile Crisis was basically when the Russians were sending missiles to Cuba. Those missiles were in range of the United States. Obviously, the United States under Kennedy didn't want those missiles within range of the United States. The Russians under who's the Russians? Nikolai Khrushchev. You know, the Russians under Nikolai Khrushchev said, well, you know what? The Cubans, they're a sovereign country. They're inviting us to send missiles down there, so we're going to send missiles down there. America, you can't really stop us because, like, you've got no authority. So Kennedy said, right, okay, I've got you. We got this. You send those missiles down there. You go past this point in the Atlantic. I think, yeah, in the Atlantic, obviously. You know, you go past this point in the Atlantic. We're going to sink those ships. Nikolai Khrushchev, the Russians said, right, okay, you sink our ships, we're going to drop the nuke bombs on you. Kennedy said, let's draw this smoky gun wagon. So at the time, and this is real, guys, nobody knew this was happening nobody knew, this was totally secret. What I'm telling you now, like, nobody knew this was happening as it was happening. So at that time, so now you can imagine it, you've got the ships, you know, the ships full of Russian missiles heading down to Cuba. You've got the Americans saying, look, if you guys go past this line, I'm going to sink all those motherfucking ships. They're going to the bottom of the drink. That's it. We are not having missiles on Cuba. And the Russians are saying, yep, take those safety pins out, those nuclear weapons, because we're going to drop this shit. So this was happening. At the same time, you had, and you'll see where I'm going in a minute, Lisa. At the same time, you had the Britain. You had the Vanguard. You had, was it the Victor, the Valiant, and the Vulcan? Sorry, the Victor, not the Vanguard. That's a submarine. So Britain on the runways in Britain, and this has happened, guys. This is open source. Britain had all their nuclear bombers on the runways with the engines running, with fuel being pumped into them. And they were told, if you take off, destroy Eastern Europe, and then try and make your way back to America, because there'll be no Britain left. There will be nowhere you can land in Britain. Try and make your way over the Antarctic. Try and make your way back to America. Land in America somewhere. So this is how close we were. Literally, this was like the massive standoff. At the last minute, Nikolai Khrushchev gave the Russian, I don't know, president or whatever, Khrushchev gave the order to turn the ships around. The ships turned around, and that was the Cuban Missile Crisis over. Now, Nikolai Khrushchev was being hailed as, you know, he saved the world from nuclear Armageddon. What I believe is that, and I will say, and a lot of historians do say this as well, that was the beginning to the end to the Soviet Union, the then Soviet Union. Now, after that, it was just, the Soviet Union just went from weakness to weakness to weakness until what, 90, or was it 92? I think 92 when it collapsed. Now, back in 62, there was a young boy watching that, and he was 11 years old. And when you're 11 years old, you're very impressionable. You are. That's when you're sucking all this information in. You're sucking all this information in. You're understanding what's happening, and you're seeing this thing happening. You're seeing Nikolai Khrushchev give up your empire. That young boy that was 11 years old, his name was Vladimir Putin, and he watched this. You know, he watched this happen at that very impressionable age. So sorry, Lisa, I know I've just given you quite a long answer there. So when Lisa Claydon is saying, do you think Putin wants more than Ukraine? I would say Putin wants to restore the former boundaries of the Soviet Union. That's what I would say, guys, you know, which extends beyond Ukraine. Right, guys, there's lots of questions. Hang on, let me just jump up here, guys. Only thing that stopped Russian advance was the Azov. Britain has no Azov yet. Yeah, so the Azov battalion, guys, they are Prava sector. Are they Prava sector? Azov, I think Azov are Prava sector, which is like right wing. Now, the Azov battalion, those guys are wild. They are absolutely wild. You know, there's been a lot of negative press about the Azov battalion, and for good reason, I guess. But you know what? They get things done. They get things done, guys. They run forwards. They're not afraid. They will take ground. So yeah, but there have been a lot of controversies about the Azov battalion as well. Louise Gethid is saying Ukraine didn't register its borders 2008 or something. Ukraine is also a part of Russia. Putin doesn't want more. Okay, so Louise Grethin there is saying because Ukraine didn't register its borders till 2008, then Ukraine is also part of Russia, and Putin only wants Ukraine. What part of Ukraine, Louise? Just give me some context, Louise. What part of Ukraine does Putin want? Does he want all of it? Or does he want all of it in a buffer zone around Poland? You know, maybe 20 kilometers. And in that, I don't know. What does that mean? What does that mean? Give me more context. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we're on. Can you guys do me a real big favor? Can you hit those buttons, guys? The like, follow, comment, subscribe button. All those buttons that help me out, guys. We're triple streaming this morning, I think. Yeah, we're triple streaming. We are on YouTube, we are on TikTok, and we are on X. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, the button's down there, guys. Really helps me out. Like, follow, comment, subscribe. If you guys are watching on TikTok, then the buttons are like up here somewhere. And if you guys are watching on X, then those buttonies are up there. I'm going to jump over to TikTok, guys, and get some comments on TikTok now. Good morning, everyone on TikTok. Lots of people joining. Good morning, everyone. Can you share the live on TikTok and do all those fantastic things that you do? Good morning, everyone. Thomas is saying, with gold going up now for the 10th week, what do you believe is happening? Yeah. I believe what's happening is people are worried. Nobody wants cash anymore, and people want to put their money in something that's not going to lose value. So they're all buying gold. And one thing I would say, guys, is look, guys, this is not financial advice. I am not qualified to give anyone financial advice, okay? What I would say is the gold spike has been like that. The silver spike, that silver spike hasn't happened yet. Go check it out yourselves, guys. Do your own research. The silver spike has not gone yet. So if you're going to put your money anywhere, just keep that in the back of your mind. Beanie Baby 88 joined. Missy D, Miss Peachy, Brian the Jones. Hello, Brian the Jones. Armchair Bushcrafter is saying hi, mate. Hi, mate, to you. Guys, look, there's so many questions and comments. I'm going to try and get as many as I can. Den is saying President Trump is our only hope. It's not going to happen, guys. Not going to happen. You know, we like false hope. Hope is a good thing. Hope is a good thing, guys. It is. It's a good thing, but it's also dangerous. If you have a little bit of hope, it gets you up. It helps you drive. It gives you that push, that succeed. If you have too much hope, you give up. too much hope and it's a bad thing, guys. It is. Too much hope's a bad thing. We need to ground our expectations in reality. And the reality right now, ladies and gentlemen, is a global conflict on an industrial scale. Martin Quinn is saying you could also... Okay. Martin Quinn is saying you could also say, in your humble opinion, then they can't block you. The problem is, Martin Quinn, if we're talking about war, guns, tanks, bombs, trains, automobiles, I don't have a humble opinion, guys. My opinion is like, you know, is the definitive source of all relativeness. S is said, Den is saying paper. Hang on, what are we talking about here? Sean the Prophet. Guys, I wish I was profiting from this. Tracy McGregor is saying, so we're putting boots on the ground as peacemakers. Surely this will not antagonize Putin. Putin's already said that he won't accept Western boots on the ground in Ukraine. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him for this. I'm not convinced the ceasefire will ever happen. I look, guys, when I talk about ceasefires, I was out there as one of the monitors for the international Minsk and Minsk II agreements. I'm not going to get into them, guys. It is what it is. But there was a ceasefire I think the ceasefire was from 2014, and that ceasefire never even started. You know, you can go and you can Google this, and whatever's written on those little bits of paper, whatever those people sign, whatever little documents and little knickknacks they do, it means nothing. It means nothing, guys. Because if those private soldiers on the front line keep doing that, if those artillery teams keep firing artillery, the ceasefire is not over. And the problem with one of the complexities with dealing with the situation in Ukraine is the fragmentation of their military. Now, what do I mean by that? In the British military, anybody who served in the British military, you will have in a battalion, for example, and this is replicated in the military, you will have a lieutenant colonel, and that lieutenant colonel will have 3 commanding officers or company commanders. He might have, depending on your teeth arms, he will have 3 he will have 3 company commanders and a support group company commander. But we'll say he's got 3. It doesn't matter. Might have 5. It doesn't matter. What I'm getting at here is it's hierarchical. So your company commander will give an order to his 3 company commanders. Those company commanders, underneath them, have 3 platoon commanders. Those 3 platoon commanders have 3 section commanders. So the colonel can give one order. He can get his company commanders and he can say, right, guys, this is what I want to happen. And that message gets disseminated down and everybody gets that message. Everybody's in, that's how you control. In the Ukrainian army, this is what happened. This is what would happen. Your colonel would tell your company commanders to do something. They would all tell him to fuck off, and they would all do different things because they all think he's bullshitting. And then the different things that they tell their guys to do, their guys will interpret that. The platoon commanders now, they will all interpret this differently. So they will all do different things. And their section commanders, they will get that order, and they may or may not carry it out, or they may or may do different things. So you don't get that. You don't get that chain of command in Ukraine like you do in the British military. So what happens is on the front line, if the word comes down from the top, if the word comes down like, I don't know, move to grid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they'll think, nah, I'm not moving there. That's bollocks. I'm going to move over there. And it's chaos, guys. When I was out there and I was doing quite a lot of work for the Ukrainian government, one of the things I was astonished by is the Ukrainians did not have rules of engagement. This was the first thing I said. I got out there and I got right up to the front line, literally right on the front line. Like I think the Russians were 500 meters away. So I'm there on my belt buckle, you know, thinking, if I get shot out here, it's going to be all right. Anyway, so I'm there on my belt buckle. They're telling me keep my head down because they're snipers. I'm like, right, yeah, okay. So through my interpreter, because this is what I wanted to do. I wasn't like, and to understand this battlefield, you need to be at each and every part of that battlefield. You can't just go and talk to people in Kiev because they're going to lie. Well, they're not going to lie. They're going to give you a biased representation of the truth. So I went. What I said to the people I was working for is, look, I can't give you this assessment without going on the front line and talking to the private soldiers. Right on the front line, I need to talk to those private soldiers. So I was there. Literally, I had to leopard crawl up because that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to talk to the people who they'd sent me to speak to. I didn't want to do that because this is because I'm a very experienced operator. If the people they send to talk to me, they're the people who will give the political line. They're the people who will say the right words. I didn't want to listen to those people. I wanted to get right on the front line, and I wanted to speak to a private soldier who was covered in mud. That's what I wanted to speak to. And I did. So got up there through my interpreter, who was a good guy. He still is a good guy, Zhenya. I said to him, mate, what are your rules of engagement? And he had no idea what I was talking about. I said, when can you shoot? And he asked him, and I didn't really speak much Ukrainian then. And he said he doesn't know when he's allowed to shoot if he sees a Russian. I said, yeah, but under what circumstances? Just if you see them? Can you use snipers? So I found out, and it was one of the main things I reported back. Without rules of engagement, without clear rules of engagement, how can you operate? Because you may have 3 units, I don't know, 1st Battalion, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Battalion, and they're all operating on different rules of engagement. So this unit may be saying, okay, right, we will engage if we see tanks. We will engage with, we will engage with anti-tank weapons if we see tanks encroach this line. This unit may say, if we see dismounted troops, we will engage at any distance. And this unit may say, we will only engage armor if the troops are past a certain point or whatever. So now you see how the difficulties in communication are on that front line. It's very difficult command and control is very difficult in Ukraine, guys. Very difficult, especially when different units have different tactics. You may have some units who've been trained by the British and they will just keep fighting all day long. You may have some units who are trained by the French and their go-to will be to wave white flags and stuff and have baguettes and croissants. You may have people who are trained by the Germans and they rely heavily on armor. So what I'm getting at here is any ceasefire negotiation in Ukraine will not disseminate down to the front line. It will not disseminate down to the front line, guys, at all. And it never has done and it never will do. Intuitive James on TikTok. Intuitive James on TikTok is saying no card alpha. No, they do not have card alpha. So for those guys who don't know, card alpha, I believe it's the it's the rules of engagement that the British military have, but I believe that is in line with the law of international armed conflict, and I believe that is in line with basic self-defense law. Card alpha basically is something you get given in the British military. You're supposed to keep in your top left or I don't know, whatever, and that gives you your rules of engagement. So if a threat to your life, you can open fire. If a threat to someone else's life, you can open fire. You've got to shout a warning, army, stop or shoot. Or maybe shoot first, then shout the warning. As long as you've shouted a warning at some point, guys. Listen, guys, don't give me any, right, guys, don't anyone who's in the military now, like open fire and say, oh, Sean said this. Right, guys, speculation, analysis, opinion. I'm sloping my shoulders right now, guys, okay? So Odyssey is saying, Odyssey on YouTube, Odyssey on TikTok is saying, when will UK cities be attacked? Guys, look, we're being attacked right now. We are being attacked right now. We are being attacked. Mass migration, guys, that's an attack. That is an attack. That is a near-peer adversarial attack. Subversion. Our government is ridiculously subverted. Cyber attacks, substations being set on fire, food supplies disrupted. I don't think we're going to get the big kaboomers coming in, guys. I've said this all along. Here in the United Kingdom, I don't see any utility in a near-peer adversary striking the UK with long-range missiles or drones. Makes no sense. No sense at all. Where are they going to be launched from? Like, where are you going to launch them from? Like, you're going to launch them from Belarus, so they're going to have to fly, like, over other NATO countries to get here? It's not going to happen, guys. Realistically, the United Kingdom, I believe, and this is my speculation, I believe that the United Kingdom is already under attack. We are under attack from asymmetric warfare, subversion, sabotage, you know, all these storage depots that are being set on fire, you know, all these things. You know, this is part of, you know, this is a part of an attack. You know, it is part of an attack. Just going to jump over to YouTube, guys. Right, ladies and gentlemen, listen, guys, we are talking about the breaking news of the day. If you guys live in the United Kingdom, this is an urgent World War III update. British boots ready to deploy in Ukraine. Now, this could be within weeks. This could be within weeks, guys. This could be within weeks. So Defense Secretary John Healey said, we are ready to deploy to Ukraine in the coming weeks. That's not me saying that, guys. That's not me speculating. That's not my speculation, analysis, and opinion. That is coming from the British government now. So the British government are saying they are ready to deploy within weeks. What you've got to understand is any peace deal between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin is not going to it's not going to be dictated on the ground. It, you know, and I've seen this before. And like I just said, you've got to understand. You've got to come right down there to the bottom, you know, to the bottom rung of that ladder. You're going to have private soldiers on the front line. If somebody's shooting at them, they're going to shoot back. And let's not pretend that these guys don't drink vodka in an evening, because I know they do, guys. Trust me, I know they do. They drink lots of vodka. So after a surprise call last Thursday, the US and the Russian president are planning to meet in Hungary. But yeah, in Hungary. Ukrainian Volodymyr Zelensky has not been invited, but he said he's ready to join if he does get an invite. Asked if troops could deploy. Asked if troops could deploy if a deal was reached in the next 2 weeks. John Healey said, if President Trump can broker a peace deal, then we will be ready to help secure that peace. But he added that Ukrainians must be the people who will decide how and what is negotiated in any peace talks. I don't think it's going to happen, guys. What we can see from this, though, and look, guys, I'll be quite clear. I don't think a ceasefire is ever going to happen. I just don't see it. So I'm saying that. And again, when I talk about these things, sometimes, you know, you've got to understand the nuance on the direction of travel. So let's just pretend that even if a ceasefire is agreed by Donald Trump and Putin, I don't know how that can work, because Donald Trump, as far as I'm concerned, isn't the president of Ukraine, but whatever, we'll go with that. Let's just say Putin agrees to a ceasefire, whatever. We've already seen these ceasefires. Like, I want to say, like, when I talk about the Minsk agreement, Minsk and Minsk 2, They never even there was never even a slowdown in those ceasefires. Guys, anybody was out in if anybody knows anyone who was out in Ukraine 14, 15, 16, maybe even 17, the Minsk 18 certainly, the Minsk and the Minsk 2 agreements, there was never even a slowdown in shelling. There was never a slowdown in attacks. It just continued. So any peace deal or ceasefire negotiation, it's going to be on paper only. Remember, these things need to be, need to be diffused down to the private soldiers on the front line, and those private soldiers on the front line need to stop shooting, and that ain't going to happen. Right, I'm gonna jump over. In fact, here we go. Actually, guys. So, members of the Coalition of the Willing, an alliance of 26 European nations, founded in March by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's to guarantee Ukraine's security, had been developing detailed plans in the event of a ceasefire, Healy said. So what I'm getting here is, these plans are being developed in case of a ceasefire, and I'm going to speculate that there are also plans made in the event of not a ceasefire. Under the plans, UK troops would join a multinational force to secure Ukraine's border. What border, though, guys? What border? What border are we talking about here? The work of over 200 military planners from 38 nations over the last 6 months had meant forces were ready to deploy when needed. Now, that doesn't sound good, guys. Listen, when I talk about the United States going into the Middle East, when I talk about the United States going into the Middle East on their own, that's because nobody the United States are big enough. They've got the world's biggest navy. They've got the world's biggest air force. They've also got the world's second biggest air force. So the United States don't need anyone. Now, if we just look at this here, guys, okay, 200 military planners from over 38 nations. Not good. That's not a good plan. It's not a good plan, that, guys. 200 military planners from over 38 different nations. Not a good plan at all. Do you know why? Too many chefs ruin the broth. There's going to be a lot of nuance in there, guys. There's going to be a lot of assumptions made in those plans. There's going to be a lot of cock-ups made. There's going to be a lot of people writing down on their, on their logistics plans. Right, I don't know. I'm just trying to think off cuff here, guys. For example, they're going to be thinking, right, how much ammunition do we need to take? Right, we need to take this much ammunition. Right, how heavy is it? Okay, right, we've got the weight of that. Okay, right. And then when it turns up, that's going to be ammunition from another nation. And that other nation, because somebody else has done that planning, that other nation just assumed that those boxes and those weights were the same. But those boxes are slightly bigger. So those boxes now don't fit in the space that they had. So now they've only got half the ammunition. And look, guys, when I give you guys this real-time analysis, speculation, and opinion, the granular stuff I'm talking about now is the real stuff that happens. Yes, of course, we all want Keir Starmer and John Healy to, have the greatest military minds working on this. But too many chefs ruin the broth, guys. Too many chefs ruin the broth. And I feel there's too many chefs here, and the broth has been well overcooked and over-seasoned. So the government were expecting to spend well over 100 million on sending troops to Ukraine. Okay, so I think that 100 million there may be just the initial deployment. So that may just be getting the soldiers from point A to point B. I think that's just what they're talking about, because 100 million is nothing, guys. Honestly, 100 million is... It's nothing. It's when you think about the salaries. So think about salaries for one thing. You've got to pay these guys per month. So you're thinking you could maybe spend, half of that on salaries a month. Then you've got food. Then you've got transport. Then you've got fuel. Then you've got servicing. Then you've got breakdowns, spare parts. Then you've got ammunition. Then you've got accommodation. Then you've got security. You know, all these things, you know, all these things are add to those costs. Martin Quinn is saying it will end up about $1 trillion. Yeah, it's like, you know, it's going to be in the trillions. A deployment to Ukraine at this scale. Remember, guys, okay, the war in Iraq cost, I think, $3 trillion. I think that cost like $5,000 a second or something. What we're talking about, when you think about the scope and the scale of the Iraqi army versus the scope and scale of the Russian military, sorry, the Iraqi military and the Russian military, there's no comparison, guys. There really is no comparison there. You know, there's no comparison. You can't compare the Iraqi military and the Russian military. They are like, you know, totally different. During his speech, John Healey also announced British soldiers will be granted new powers to shoot down drones threatening military bases. What did I say, guys? What did I say? How many times have I said this? You know, when everybody's coming on talking about lasers and stuff. Oh, Sean, what about this Dragonfire laser? What about this laser? What about this? What do I always say? What do I always say? I say, guys, a waste of money. They're an absolute waste of money. You need to shoot them down. We've got the answer. We've got the solution. It's small arms shooting them down. That's the reality. So it turns out, you know, the British government are catching up. But don't worry, guys, because, you know, the British government will have spent millions to find out what I told you guys for free. With that nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share my stuff as well, guys. Okay. Right. I'm going to get some comments here on YouTube, guys. Donna is saying the UK public sector debt was approximately 2.9 billion, 2.9 trillion at the end of September. I don't know. Look, a war changes things, all right? When you're in a war, you just turn that money printer on and you get and a war would solve all the budgetary problems in the UK. A war would solve every problem that we have in the United Kingdom now financially. Because Rachel Reeves could say, we are fighting a war in Russia, in Ukraine. We are fighting a war now. We have to put taxes up. We have a black hole and we all have to pay. That's, you know, it solves all those problems. Do you want our soldiers on the front line to not have the right kit and equipment? No, of course not. And Donna is saying the UK will turn into a third world country at the stage we're going. It's hard to argue that we're not a third world country already. Like, I was watching a video of, I want to say it was Birmingham, but I don't know. It was certainly in the UK. And there was like lots of beautiful, you know, beautiful and rich in Africans on the streets. And they had like shopping trolleys turned upside down and they were barbecuing something just in the middle of the street. This was in like the town centre. And I was like, wow, that is really, you know, there we go. Look, you know, this is how we roll now in the United Kingdom. And X82 is saying, I agree, we've been a third world country for a while. You see, the problem is there are parts of the UK that are ridiculously rich. The City of London, not London, the City of London, ridiculously rich, guys. The City of London has a lot of money. Look, guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but you know that there's like London is two cities, right? You do know that, don't you? That there's London, and then inside London, there's the City of London. And inside the City of London, they have their own mayor, and they have their own regulations, and they have their own police force. Did you guys know that? Louise Grethin is saying, we have a black hole and we need to be sucked into it. Yes, gonna say we, oh, okay, we already, okay, I don't know. Oh yeah, we are already a third world country. Enriched says, damned Doberman company. 82X, X82, that sounds like a bus. It's on YouTube. He's saying, we need to get rid of little Siddiqui. Look, guys, I gave you the, you know how I give you guys the scenario? Guys, listen, I'm going to give you this again. You know how I give you guys, I'm going to go through it quick. I give you guys a scenario. If we was in the UK, if in the UK they passed the law and that law was wild and everybody's firstborn child had to go to the government and you never saw it, we have no legal framework to resist that, right? I've talked about that. Now we have that as a real, potentially, as a real world scenario. Right now, guys, we have this as a real world scenario. Right now, we have this as a real world scenario, guys, because Sadiq Khan has been accused of. Do you know what? I've got to be very careful what I say here, guys. Let me get this up as a. Let me get this up on the headline. Let me get this up on the headline. I'm just, guys, I'm just really cautious about what I've got to write. Okay, so this is from the Daily Mail, guys. I'm reading you this now as a headline, all right? So this is not me speculating. This is me literally reading from a headline, 20th of October, in the Daily Mail. This is just a headline. Sadiq Khan accused of facilitating cover-up of grooming gangs in London after reports of young girls being raped by groups of men in capital. So that's, I'm just reading that as a headline, guys. That's from the Daily Mail. So let's just, you know, let's just go with this, guys, okay? Let's just say that Sadiq Khan has been accused of facilitating cover-up of grooming gangs in London. And let's just say that evidence, now I'm speculating, let's just say that evidence is released today, tomorrow, that proves 100% that Sadiq Khan has been covering up these rape gangs. Let's just say that happens, all right? But he doesn't resign. He says, "No, I'm not going to resign. I've got a mandate to be the mayor of London." Let's just say he doesn't resign. So, okay, right, okay, fair enough. At the next election, he wins. He wins that election again. How do we get him out? Like, how do we get him out? We can't. Is it right that that, again, this is speculating now, hypothetical scenario, would it be right that you have a mayor of a city that's protecting rapists? And I'm not saying that he is, guys. I'm just speculating, okay? You guys think what you want. Is it fair that you have a mayor of a city that's protecting rapists and he's openly doing it and, you know, he's not committing any crime and he's elected again? Like, where do you go with that? Where do you go with that? And this is what I keep saying, guys. Here in the United Kingdom, we have no way of opposing a tyrannical government. So let's go one further. You know, let's go one further. All right, let's go one further. Let's say, so now you understand where I'm going with this, don't you? So let's say the government passed that law and the firstborn child of every family have to be given to the government. How do you oppose that? We can't oppose that. Legally, we cannot oppose that. Legally, what we have to do is wait till the next election and vote. How many kids are going to go in 4 years? Unbelievable, guys. You know, and this is why I keep talking about constitutions, and like, anybody who wants to comment and say that we have a constitution in the United Kingdom, we do not have a constitution in the United Kingdom, guys. We do not have one. We have a series of documents that form the British or English constitution. They are heavily interpreted differently by different legal companies. And like, if we do have a constitution, where is it? Where can I go and see it? Why wasn't I taught about it at school? This is the difference between the US Constitution. The US Constitution, you know, you can find it. It's not a big document. You can find it. You can read it. And those interpretations of those amendments, of those particulars, everybody knows what they mean. So there's no discussion. My TikTok's gone off, right? I think I'm only double streaming, guys. I'm just on YouTube now because the TikTok has totally swizzled me off. I don't know why I was. Maybe I was saying something about Sadiq Khan and they didn't like it on TikTok. But anyway, guys, it looks like we're just double streaming at the moment. We are just on. We're just on YouTube and we're just on TikTok. Guys, listen. If you are on TikTok and it goes off, we are triple streaming, guys. We're on YouTube, we're on X, and we are on TikTok. So if it goes off on TikTok or if it goes off, we're on other platforms or we're on the other platforms. Listen, guys, what I will say is, I'm going to close this down in a couple of minutes on TikTok. I'll be then continuing this live stream over on YouTube. But look, guys, the crux of this video is British boots on the ground in Ukraine. What we know so far is this could happen within weeks. What we also know is that there have been can I use the word intensive? This has already been planned for in the event of a ceasefire. This is not me speculating now. This comes as the Defence Secretary in the United Kingdom, John Healey. He came out in a speech yesterday and he said British troops are ready to deploy as part of a multinational force to Ukraine. What I'm speculating will happen. First of all, I don't think a ceasefire is ever going to happen. I just don't see it, guys. I understand the culture. I understand the dynamics. I understand the military structuring, how this works. So, first of all, it's never going to happen. If there is some sort of ceasefire on paper, that would be the green light for the British troops to move in and the coalition to move in. And then, as soon as those troops are in, guess what? Officially, the ceasefire's over. They take their they get their peacekeeping t-shirts. They take those peacekeeping t-shirts off and put their warfighting t-shirts on. It's a slightly darker shade of green. Also, another key thing that was said in the by John Healey was that Vladimir Putin views Britain as his number 1 enemy. Wasn't there a rap song called? And I'm just thinking, one. Is that like, I don't know. Public Enemy. Wasn't that by like the Nasty Boys? I think that was by, I don't know. Maybe John Healey likes a bit of Nasty Boys. I think it was Nasty Boys. So what John Healey is saying, that Vladimir Putin views Britain as his number 1 enemy because of the country's support for Ukraine. And look, guys, whatever you think or whatever you've been told, unless it's what I'm about to tell you now, it's wrong. So the one thing that stopped the Russians rolling through Ukraine in 2022, one thing, it was a number of things, but the main thing, without this, it would have been over, was the NLAW missile system that the British gave to the Ukrainians. And I can remember my friend saying, oh fuck, because when those shipments turned up, he knew it was on like Donkey Kong. And that weapon system, beautiful weapon system, like the multinational corporation to make that weapon system is fantastic. I mean, like, I think the circuit boards are made in Japan. The warheads made in Sweden. I think the propellant is made in maybe Germany. And then all these parts are shipped to the United Kingdom and it's assembled in the UK. Brilliant weapon system. Now, the thing about that weapon system is that people say, oh, but Sean, the Javelin is a better system. It can fire up to 3 kilometers. Yeah, it can. But do you know what the Javelin can't do? You can't fire the Javelin up close and personal. You can't fire the Javelin from inside a building. So it didn't work. It didn't work in the context of the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. So what happened is you got these NLAWs, and I've spoke to people who fired them, and do you know what they were shouting when they were firing them, the Ukrainians? They were shouting, God save the Queen, as they were firing the NLAWs. I think that's pretty cool. So that was the main thing that stopped Putin's, initial drive into Ukraine. That was the one thing, and that was obviously, supplied by Britain. And of course, Britain have been a big, a big ally, a big supporter, a big contributor. I think Zelensky's coming here, well, not here, but to London. Hang on, let me just Google this. No, I'm sure I heard he was coming here soon. I don't know. I must have made that up. No, I can't find anything on the news. You know how I say that Vladimir Putin is playing Trump? I think Trump's playing Zelensky as well. I think Trump's playing Zelensky. You know when you go to these meetings with people and they've got no intention of giving you anything, but they're going to have the meeting because they need to be seen to be doing the right thing and ticking the right boxes. I don't think Donald Trump has got any intention of supporting Zelensky at all, guys. I don't think he's got any intention of doing that, guys, at all. I think he's just going through the motions of, let Zelensky come over, let him do his thing. We're not going to put on a show for him. He can sit here, we can have a press conference, and then he can go on. We've done the meeting. He's spoken to us, and there he goes. So on TikTok, Dave Bry has put up a statistic saying 1.8 million soldiers dead in this conflict. I think that number's high, but I have seen that number pushed out before. Let's just consider this, guys. 1.8 million families, 1.8 million mums, 1.8 million dads, potentially 1.8 million children without, all lost someone. Families devastated. Do you think they're just going to give up this land for nothing because Donald Trump says so? Do you think they're just going to hand that over that their friends have died to protect? No, of course not. And when you consider, and that 1.8 million number there, I think that is a big number. But when you consider, just go with that as a 1.8 million number. When you consider the British military in their 20-year deployment to Afghanistan, lost 457 people, kind of puts this conflict into a different context, doesn't it? And when I keep saying to you guys that we're heading towards a global conflict on an industrial scale, it's going to be industrial death, guys. It's going to be industrial death as well. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, listen, guys, I am going to close this down now. Dave Bry is saying it's a true number. Okay, well, Dave Bry is saying it's a true number. Who am I to argue? Listen, guys, I'm going to turn this off on TikTok. I'm going to jump over to YouTube. We're going to continue this live stream, guys. We're going to talk about urgent World War III updates, British boots on the ground in Ukraine, global conflict on an industrial scale, guys. That's where we're heading right now, guys. So I will be turning this off on TikTok. I'll be jumping over to YouTube. If you're not going to jump over to YouTube, guys, I'll be back on later today at 8. I'll see you guys later. And I'm the Real Raven One on YouTube if you're jumping over there. And we're off. 1.8 million dead, guys. Like those numbers that can you try and visualize those numbers and that human loss? It's phenomenal. Not in a good way either, like phenomenally bad. But they're the numbers we're looking at. That's the conflict that we're walking into, sleepwalking into it. And this is what we're up against. And I've said this, and I'll keep saying this right now. NATO minus the United States, so Europe basically, we can't win the Russians. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care what anyone else says. I'm giving you guys the most comprehensive analysis. Go and speak to a Sky News reporter. Go and speak to a Sky News reporter who've got, they've probably got a degree in history and geopolitical, geopolitics, and they'll be giving you their opinion from that. Go and listen to a colonel. He will give you his opinion on whatever military he's in, because he's a colonel. He's spent a lot of, or she, it's going to be he. I wouldn't listen to a woman colonel. I wouldn't. They're not aggressive enough. Do you know what? Actually, saying that, very rarely you find that. If they're a colonel, they've spent a lot of time in that particular military, because you wouldn't get to a colonel without putting the time in, you know. So they know a lot about that military. They don't know about supply chains. They don't know about logistics. I'm talking about civilian logistics that support them. They don't know about other tactics of other countries. They've read about them, sure, but have they lived it? No, of course not. So I'm giving you guys this as a holistic analysis of taking everything into consideration. Everything. Logistics, command and control, weapon systems, tactics, everything. Geopolitical political will on both sides. And it's not a win. It's not a win. I will argue with anyone with whatever letters after their name. If they want to argue with me and say that it's a win, NATO without the United States against Russia is a win for NATO, they're wrong. They're wrong, guys. We don't have enough men. And what I mean by that is, yes, I've given you guys the analogy with the football players. We have initially in a war, maybe this is what Putin wants. Maybe he wants this cold, grinding attrition. If this was a war, yes, I agree. First couple of months, you would see NATO forces push, drive, succeed, push the Russians back in massive areas. They would be taking back a lot of ground. But it would have cost the Russians nothing, because the Russians would only be throwing conscripts at this. And those conscripts would just be there to slow the opposing forces down. And you know what? Because they're conscripts, they don't need to give them a year's training. They don't need to give them 6 months battle camp. They can just push them out and keep pushing them. But do you know what happens when a NATO soldier dies? It takes 6 months to replace them. You might be able to condense that maybe into 4, but it takes a long time to replace them. And the NATO commanders do not have the attritional appetite that the Russians do. The Russians will happily, let people, send people to their non-coming backness. And that just won't happen with the West. And, like I said earlier, like too many chefs spoil the broth. That's what you have right now, guys. NATO under whose command, whose tactics, whose overall command. Do they know are they interoperable? Do they have the nuance? I would say not. I would say different nations are at different political. I'll give you a real world example. Back in, I can't remember when it was. I don't know, 2006, call it. Back in 2006, I was in the military in Afghanistan, and we called for, when you go out on these missions, you get dedicated air support. So we had Italian fast jets. Excuse me. I don't know what they were. Probably, I don't know, Expressos or something. And these Italian fast jets, again, this is why I'm talking about cock-ups. Like it was just one of them things. So we went out on a patrol. We got into a gunfight. So we called in the air support. These Italian pilots, they wouldn't come down below 10,000 feet because they were told that under no circumstances can they drop their aircraft below 10,000 feet. Well, there was heavy cloud base this night. And if they'd have dropped below maybe 5,000, they would have been able to see the target. Their rules of engagement were they had to positively identify that target before releasing those bombs. They wouldn't drop below that altitude. So we couldn't get those bombs. So this is what I'm talking about, interoperability with different units. If we'd have been operating with a British unit or a British air support or American air support, they would have come down, especially the Americans, they would have come down and, helped us out. But they didn't. And this is what I'm talking about. Different countries, when you've got these coalitions, they're very complicated. When you've got these coalitions, you have a lot of nuance, you have a lot of granularization, you have a lot of different political will. You have a lot of different political will. You know, some countries will be there and they will be winning that war. Some countries will be there just to get the tick in the box. They don't really want to be there. They don't really want to lose any guys. They don't really want to take any ground. They just want to go out there. The politicians want to go out there with the troops, take some pictures once a year, come back and win the next election. The Russians, on the other hand, they have one person in charge. What he says goes. And it's always better to stick to a bad plan than try and change a plan mid operation. Louise is saying, okay, built by Elon, so I'm half and half. I think Elon is a good guy or a bad guy. Have I missed some? Okay, sorry guys. I'm all right. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm jumping into a conversation here. John the Geek is saying they call it cannon fodder, where they keep sending waves and waves of trained and untrained troops to attack positions or positions. Yeah, and the Russians are really good at doing this. And this is why I'm thinking, and I'll be quite clear, I'm thinking that the migrants that are coming to the United Kingdom, they're going to have to be used as a conscript army. I really do. I don't know, guys. I'm just looking at what's coming. Like, everybody can see it now. I'm looking at what's coming and I'm thinking, where can we get these people from? And if if you guys want to go back to the Spanish Civil War days, I guess, Britain's got history of doing this. We took in a lot of pirates. We let pirates come to the United Kingdom. We let pirates have the South Coast. And then when a war broke out, we said, right, listen, you guys are no longer pirates. You guys are privateers. You guys are now part of the British naval fleet. Go out there and do your business. And that worked really well. It did. It worked really well for Britain, because what happened there is, and I don't know how this is going to pan out, guys, with these migrants, but they're clearly here for a reason. There's clearly a reason that they're here, because we could stop them like that. I mean, guys, did you see the article with the 10-year? I'm not even going to talk about it. So, worked really well with the pirates, because when the pirates went out and had a war, pirates would naturally steal ships and take ships. So a pirate would go out with one ship and he might come back with 3, which is good, because now we've got 3 ships. We've got more ships. We're taking those ships as prizes. And that's why, the rule Britannia rules the waves. But yeah, we are heading towards this global conflict, guys, on an industrial scale. Donna is saying Kremlin pays for war with territory. China and North Korea advance deep into Russia's Far East, Ukraine's foreign intelligence. So what I've been saying all along is that there's going to be this new world order. This new world order. And it's going to be, you're going to have, Russia will win. Okay. I'm not saying that. I'm saying Russia will win NATO the way NATO are right now. NATO need to really change and really change their tactics and change their manpower scenario, or they're going to lose. That's the reality. Now, one possible scenario would be, and I do think this is likely, one possible scenario would be where Russia manages to push through Ukraine, push through Poland, all the way up to France, all the way up to Calais. And Britain and the Allies would be fighting everyone all the way back, literally fighting all the way back. When that's done, the Russians would be spent, like financially, morally, not moral, yeah, financially, like spiritually, They would have nothing left. Britain, we would be broken as well. We would have nothing left. Because that's what happens after a war, guys. Both sides are fucked. Both sides, there's no young men. There's no money. Wars are bad for everyone. They're bad for everyone. And in that context, if China can manage to stay out of a conflict, if China can manage not to get involved, which is the smart play, it's a smart play not to get involved, guys, for China, you know, because what China would then do is see everybody destroy themselves while they're building themselves. And then at the end of it, China would say, okay, well, you know, this is our land now. So China would then take some, you know, financial support of Russia. Russia's then in charge of Europe. So you'd have this huge stretch of land going from, I don't know, France all the way up through the Baltics, Ukraine, Germany, Poland, Europe, Russia, China, you know, that huge patch of land. And that would be your, I guess that would be, you know, maybe your Oceania. And then on the other side of the Atlantic, you would have America. Britain would be bankrupt at this point. America would come in and they say, listen, guys, we got you. You guys are part of us now. You know, America would move in. We become 51st state or whatever. And then that's how you get this new world shift now. So now you've got America, Greenland, maybe even Venezuela, Canada, Britain, Ireland. Taking control of Britain gives you control of Falklands, you get Antarctica, Australia, New Zealand. I'm saying Israel as well. I'm also saying Japan and Taiwan in this context. So that's where I think there's a real likelihood that the world is going to be carved up into that context. And you know, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think that's the direction of travel. Tracy McGregor is saying, I don't understand if we can stop the boats, why aren't we? It's got way out of control, out of hand. Our police are no longer able to control the migrant crimes that are taking place. I agree, Tracy. So let's just answer this with really fundamental answers. I don't understand why we can't stop the boats. Why aren't we? So we're not stopping the boats because we don't want to. That's a fair answer. You know, you can granularize, because this part of this legislation is bullshit. It's bullshit, guys. All right. If I was in charge, I would tell the Navy, go to that line, any boats that come, you send them back. I don't give a fuck what the French say. That's what I'd say. That's what I'd do. You do it overnight. As soon as you do that, 2 or 3 dinghies, it's over. It's over. It's done. They don't even bother coming anymore because they know they're going to get sent back. So if they're not doing that, why? Because they don't want to. Okay, fair enough. Why don't they want to? Well, the next logical answer is they don't want to because they want those migrants here. Now that then brings you down. That then sends you into a rabbit hole. And I don't know the answer to this, guys. You know, but they certainly, the government behind the scenes, whatever dastardly plans they've got hatching, you know, the government want those people here. That's the reality, guys. You know, there's no getting around it. There's no getting around it. None. Why would they put up? Why would they put up with this? And it has to happen. Whatever happens has to happen before the next election. It has to happen, guys. And we've got call it 26, 20, we've got like 2 years. But whatever happens has to happen before the next election. Now, whether Sadiq Khan's going to come out and he's going to do a big apology and say, look, guys, I apologize. We knew we were heading to a world war and we needed to get these guys in and these guys are going to be used as conscripts now. I don't know whether somebody's going to say, right, we're in world war, we're not having elections, everybody's locked down, you're all on universal basic income, and, you know, these migrants are now just going to be spenders to boost the economy? I don't know. Or, right, guys, we're at World War III. All our soldiers are out fighting. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a migrant security force to protect us, to secure us. I don't think that's going to end well. Yeah, so deepest, darkest secret room. I do think that's, I do think that is I don't look. Right now, we're talking about the migrant crisis in the UK. There's three real options for me. Let's just recap. Let's just recap. These migrants are coming, and it's very easy to stop them. Easy. Literally, like, it would take 6 hours to stop them. You don't need to break any international laws. You don't need any new peace, any new treaties. You don't need any legislation. You tell all the lawmakers to go fuck themselves. I could do this in 6 hours. So it's not being done. So like we just said, why isn't it? Why aren't they stopping them? The only answer is because the government don't want to stop them. It's not because they can't. They clearly can. Okay, so let's just take that as a given. Let's just take that as a tick. Right, okay, the government don't want to stop them. The next question is, why don't the government want to stop them? The only logical answer is, and I know it's a broad answer, they want them here. Now, why? Now, I've got three options for this. I've got three options. One, they're going to be used as a conscript army to fight the Russians. Like Deepest, Darkest Secret Room is saying, citizenship for service. Like, I don't know, Starship Troopers style or something. Two, they're going to be some sort of internal security to bolster security inland security when all the soldiers are away fighting. Three, they're here to be spenders to increase GDP, to increase the new financial system that's going to be brought in when everybody goes on to universal basic income. Because if everybody's on universal basic income, the more people spending, it means the more money going through the banks and the more transactions and the more finances flowing. Of those three guys, I genuinely don't know. Like, that's literally as far as I can go. Right now, I'm seeing there was an article released by the Germans. I can't remember when it was, like a couple of days ago. The Germans released an article, and the Germans are planning. The German military, the German. I can't remember who his name is. Rolf. I don't know what his name is. Basically, German in charge of the medical. He was like the general surgeon or something, and they're planning their hospitals to be able to take 1,000 casualties a day. That's what they're planning for. They're planning for a wartime scenario where they would receive 1,000 casualties per day. So straight away, I was like, right, hang on a minute. The German military, the whole military, is only 82,000. So are they planning on fighting a war for 6 months and then being done? So straight away, I'm thinking, right, are the Germans planning conscription as well? Are the Germans planning this as well? Guys, we're heading to an industrialized conflict. That's what's coming. The UBI ratio to help the cogs turning, correct. More is better. Yeah, so we're talking about here, guys. They're my three options for what these migrants are going to be used for. I don't know which one it is, guys. That's as far as I can trace this back. I can't go any further than that. I can argue for universal basic income. I can argue for a security force. Maybe it's a little bit of... Do you know what? Maybe it's a little bit of each. Slim is saying the Ukrainians tried to enlist the barbarians and they all scampered. I don't know what that means, Slim. The Ukrainians tried to enlist the barbarians, but they all scampered. I don't know what that means. Matt is saying, Templar Matt is saying, Ukraine should have said no to NATO and kept themselves neutral. There's a lot more nuance here, guys. The conflict in Ukraine started in 2013. I mean, you could argue it started before then. So the conflict in Ukraine started in 2013. Basically, what happened is, I'm going to try and fly through this, guys, okay? What happened in 2013 in Ukraine? The Ukrainian government, the parliament, because you get parliament and president in Ukraine, the Ukrainian parliament had passed laws giving the Ukrainians more financial ties to Europe because they were looking over at Europe. They were looking at places like Poland, Czech Republic, and they were like, wow, these guys are doing really well. You know, they've got a better quality of life. They're getting more money and they have things better. We want to better things for ourselves. And ultimately, you cannot criticize someone for wanting a better quality of life for themselves. You can't. You just cannot do that. No one. You can criticize the way they go about it, sure, but you can't criticize people for wanting. I'm talking about people stealing things, and you can't criticize someone for wanting a better quality of life for themselves. I think we're all in agreement, right? So what happened is when this legislation was passed, that the Ukrainians would have more ties to the European Union. This got sent to the president, and the president, Viktor Yanukovych, had to sign it off, and then it would have been so. Do you know what Yanukovych did? He signed a different thing. Well, he got the letter, and he Tipex the European name out, and he just put Russia. So what he actually did is he signed another decree that gave them greater ties with Russia. So what that did is that started the Euromaidan revolution, and from there you have the annexation of Crimea, you have the annexation of Donbass, and the country's been in war since, I would say, early 2024. I mean, you have the Maidan Revolution at the end of not 2012, 2014. You have the Maidan Revolution at the end of 2013. So you've got to start this story there, and then all the steps that have led up to the 2022 ground invasion. So it's very difficult to say Ukraine should have said no to NATO. Ukraine should have never given up their nuclear weapons, back in 93. So back in 93, when the Ukrainians got their independence from Russia, they said, look, we don't want to be a threat to anyone. We're going to give you our nuclear. We're going to hand over our nuclear weapons. We are not a threat. We just want to be a peaceful nation. Russia, America, and Britain all signed and agreed to defend Ukraine if Ukraine ever come under attack. Oh, so Donna is saying Vladimir Putin is doing secret missile tests in the Arctic Ocean as NATO's spy planes. As NATO spy planes monitor the war games in Chile, warning to the West. So there's like if you guys go onto Google Maps or whatever, if you guys go, I don't know, Western Russia, I guess, Western Russia, right at the north at the Antarctic, there's like an island, and it's like a C shape. Is it, or is it that way? I think it's that way to you guys, that way to me. That's where they do all their testing, in that little region. What I have said previously, guys, I don't think a nuclear weapon is ever going to be used in conflict again. I don't. I'm standing by that, unless we start to see nuclear weapons being tested. Now, people think that you can just take a nuclear weapon out of the fridge or like out of the cellar or wherever you keep them, and like you're good to go. You're not. You need a lot. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen to that nuclear weapon, guys, for it to reach critical mass and go kabooma kabooma like we've seen. And putting them on a missile gives, you know. There's also engineering issues with that. So, you know, until we start to see nuclear weapons being tested, I'm going to stick by my guns, guys, and I'm going to say I don't think we're ever going to see a nuclear weapon being fired, you know, in conflict. Louise is saying there are places in Ukraine still living quite well. Yes, they are. It's only certain parts that are screwed. Absolutely. Like in any conflict, you know, in any conflict. Like I can remember, I was out there in 22 when this invasion had happened in, where was we? So you guys have heard Irpin and Bucha in just outside Kiev. They're so close together. It should be one place, but it's called Irpin and Bucha. Beautiful, beautiful places, guys. I can remember going into school in Irpin. This was wild. So I remember going into this school in Irpin, and in that school they had a museum of artifacts left from the Second World War, guys. Like the stuff that they had in there. It was phenomenal, like real stuff like absolutely preserved from the Second World War. And I was looking, I was thinking, wow, this is like, this stuff here is at like some of the stuff they had at their school museum. It was better than the school I went to, guys. It was absolutely better than the school I went to. Well, where was I going with that? Yeah, sorry. So some of those places, you know, it was in, was walking through Irpin, or Bucha and Irpin, and like one side of the street, the houses had been totally wrecked. Tanks driving through the gardens, bombed, roofs missing. Literally, the other side of the street, absolutely fine. Nothing touched. That's war for you guys. You know, that is war for you. Oh. Military watchers believe Putin could be preparing to test his new Flying Chernobyl nuclear-powered cruise missile. Yeah, so these nuclear-powered cruise missiles, they tried. So the Russians tried this in like. They tried this in. I want to say the 60s. They had a nuclear-powered plane. But the pilots kept dying because they kept getting radiation poisoning, because radiation sickness, because there was no shielding. But what I think they're doing now is they're using an RTG, which is so an RTG is what they use on satellites. It's nuclear RTG, radioactive, thermal. I don't know. Basically, it's some nuclear stuff in a little case, and it creates heat. That heat creates charge or whatever, and you can spin a turbine. And that turbine will power the airplane. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have been fantastic this morning. Thank you for hanging out with me. Does look like could happen within weeks, guys. That's not me speculating. That is John Healy now saying that British boots could be on the ground within weeks in Ukraine. You guys know my thoughts on that. You know, I don't think that we're going to see a ceasefire there. I think we're heading towards a global conflict. I think we are in a global conflict on an industrial scale. That's the way the world is right now, guys. Okay. I don't know what the future of the migrant crisis is in the UK. The three options I just gave you. Maybe it's a bit of all. One, there would be as a migrant army. Two, they would one, there would be conscription, service for citizenship. Two, there would be security to secure places in the United Kingdom. Three, used as spenders when we all get brought in universal basic income. Guys, look, wild times. The world's crazy right now. I'm going to leave this now. I'm going to close this down now because I've got some cider I need to bottle. I'll be back on the live stream today at 8, and we're going to check out what shenanigans have happened in the last 12 hours. Thank you for hanging out with me this morning, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share my stuff on your socials if you can, guys. I really do appreciate that. I'll see you guys later.